Get out of my house! You are a curse in this family!" the proud chief shouted. The proud chief kicked his only pregnant daughter out of his house, but after 3 years she returned and shocked him. This is not just a story, it is God's message, spiritual growth and healing to the brokenhearted and to the people who have lost hope in life. It is the final part of the story of the proud chief in one African village. Stay tuned as we dive into the final drama of the proud chief. Please subscribe to this channel to grow your faith. Chief Daniel sat in his cane chair, shoulders bent, staff by his side like an abandoned companion. His once proud voice, the one that commanded meetings, was now seldom heard. For 2 years, no word of Lina reached his ears. The villagers never forgot. Their whispers stung sharper than scorpions. Do you remember when he drove his only daughter out? Pride has no harvest? He thought he was wiser than everyone. Now look at him. He clenched his jaw, pretending not to hear, but inside the words were knives. One afternoon, his old friend, the man who had returned from the UK with smooth words and a smile like oil, came visiting. His name was Richard, the one the chief had once called brother. Richard's laughter filled the compound. "My friend, life is opportunity. Money waits for those with courage. I have a business plan, very sure, very clean. If you invest now, your name will shine again. You will never beg for respect. You will never know shame." The words poured like honey into Daniel's ears. His chest, swollen with regret, longed for a chance to rise again. "What kind of business?" he asked eagerly. Richard smiled, spreading documents across the table. "Look here. International export, fast profit, all legal. I myself am doing it." Chief Daniel nodded, his heart pounding. "This is it. This is my second chance. They will respect me again." He sold his poultry farm. He sold 2 plots of land in town. He borrowed money from fellow elders. He signed papers with shaking hands. He waited. Days turned into weeks. The promised trucks never arrived. The phone calls went unanswered. One morning, Richard was gone. His house locked. His name vanished. The documents the chief clutched turned out to be nothing but ink and lies. The news spread like fire in Harmattan. Chief has been scammed. His UK brother ate his money and disappeared. Even a yam seller is wiser than him. Laughter followed him wherever he walked. Children pointed and mocked. See the great chief who threw his daughter away and lost all his wealth. The respect he once commanded in meetings evaporated. When he spoke, no one listened. When he walked, no one bowed. His cane, once a symbol of honor, now only tapped the earth in shame. He began to beg for food from the very villagers who had once carried his words like scripture. Some turned him away. Others gave him scraps, muttering, "This is the same man who thought his name was greater than mercy." Chief Daniel, once tall with pride, now walked with a bent back and hollow eyes. His beard grew gray, his clothes hung loose. At night he sat on the veranda, staring into the darkness, whispering his daughter's name like a prayer. "Lina, my joy, my only child, I cast you away like a stranger. Where are you tonight? Did the world eat you alive? Or did God spare you?" His wife, Mama Grace, sat beside him, her face worn with years of sorrow. She never stopped praying. In the corner of her drawer, she kept a small calendar where she marked the days, weeks, months, and years since Lina left. 2 years of silent weeping. 2 years of wondering if her daughter still breathed. And each night, when her husband fell into restless sleep, she would whisper to the heavens, "Lord, return my daughter to me before these eyes close forever." The market in Greenfield was noisy as always, but in one corner, the laughter grew sharp when Chief Daniel passed by. "Look, the mighty chief who sold his land for fake papers," someone whispered. "Better to be a poor farmer than a proud fool," another laughed. "And what of his daughter? Maybe she's in the streets now. God alone knows." Daniel clenched his staff, his ears burning. Once the market fell silent when he entered. Now even boys who had barely learned to shave mocked him openly. He lowered his head, shuffled past the stalls, and bought nothing. At home, he sat on the veranda, staring at his empty compound. Pride, his last companion, had left him too. That afternoon, Mama Grace received a visitor. A friend from another village, Ngozi, entered the compound carrying a basket of peppers. She greeted warmly, her eyes softening at the sight of Grace's weary face. "My sister," Ngozi said, setting the basket down. "It has been too long. I thought I should come and see you." Grace forced a smile, though her eyes were tired. "You are welcome. Sit, let us talk. These days I do not see many faces except sorrow." They sat together, shells of groundnuts between them. For a while they spoke of weather, of harvests, of prices in the market. Then Ngozi leaned closer, lowering her voice. "My sister, there is something I must tell you. On my last trip to the city, I met someone. She said her name is Lina." Mama Grace froze. The groundnut shells fell from her hands. Her breath caught. "Lina," she whispered, her eyes wide. Ngozi nodded slowly. "Yes, she is alive. She has a little daughter, a beautiful child, strong and healthy. She is baking, selling food, working hard. She looked well." The words struck Mama Grace's heart like sweet thunder. Her hands trembled, her lips quivered, and tears filled her eyes before she could hold them back. "My daughter," she whispered, clutching her chest. "My child is alive. She is alive." Her tears fell freely now, rolling down her cheeks, soaking her wrapper. She grabbed Ngozi's hands. Tell me everything. Where did you see her? How does she smile? Does she eat well? Who cares for her? Does she remember me?" Ngozi squeezed her hands gently. "She remembers. She said your name with tears in her eyes. She said she is safe, though life has not been easy." Mama Grace broke into sobs, her shoulders shaking. For 2 years she had lived with only questions. That day, she received an answer. Not perfect, but enough to breathe again. "My child," she cried. "Oh Lord, you kept her. You carried her when I could not. Thank you, Father, thank you." Inside the house, Chief Daniel listened. His heart pounded against his ribs. He did not step out, but tears burned his eyes. "She lives?" he thought, gripping his staff tightly. "She lives, and I cast her out into the night. She lives, and I am here, ruined, mocked, forgotten." That night, as the crickets sang, Daniel sat on the veranda alone. He pressed his face into his palms and wept silently, his tears dripping into the dust. It was after a Sunday service, the sun high and the compound of the church buzzing with chatter, that Lina first noticed her. She was a woman unlike the others, tall, graceful, her dress gleaming like water under sunlight. Gold jewelry shimmered at her ears, her hair neatly styled, her perfume rich enough to turn heads. Her smile was practiced, sweet, disarming, powerful. As Lina cleared her small tray of cakes outside the church gate, Mirabelle approached. "My dear," she said softly, bending down just enough to look into Lina's eyes. "You remind me of myself many years ago." Lina froze, unsure whether to bow her head or step back. "Good afternoon, Ma. My name is Mirabelle. I help young women like you discover their true worth. If you want a better life, call me. You do not belong under this hot sun." Then, with a swish of perfume and grace, she was gone. The following Sunday, Mirabelle returned. Again she bought every cake. Again she sat near Lina, her voice like velvet. "My dear, you have beauty and manners that money cannot buy. Do you know what men would give for such grace? You could live in a house like mine. You could wear clothes like this." She gestured at her glittering outfit. "You could give your daughter a future beyond crumbs." Lina swallowed hard, her hands twisting her wrapper. Her mind fought itself. She thought of Mama Peace's steady smile, of the warm cakes that were slowly feeding her dignity. But she also thought of the endless sweat of the sun, of the poverty that still clung no matter how she worked. Mirabel's eyes were soft but sharp. "Think about it," she whispered. "You deserve more than this." Weeks passed, and Mirabel's visits continued. Each time she brought gifts, a small dress for Amara, a pair of sandals for Lina, perfume in a tiny bottle. Each time she spoke, her words dripped with promises. One afternoon, she invited Lina to her mansion. The house was vast, its floors polished, its rooms filled with women who laughed too loudly, their wrists heavy with jewelry, their smiles painted bright. They looked beautiful, yes, but their eyes carried a strange emptiness, like windows closed against a storm. "This could be your life," Mirabel said, walking her through the grand hallway. "No more baking in the sun, no more begging for coins. Here, you will have everything." But that night, as Lina lay awake in the guest room Mirabel offered, her spirit trembled. Something about the laughter of the women, the way Mirabel's words pressed too softly against her ears, did not feel safe. And then, from the corridor, she heard Mirabel's voice. "Yes, sir, she is 25, very fresh, beautiful. Next weekend I will deliver her. Don't worry. She trusts me already. The rest I will handle." Lina's blood froze, her stomach twisted. She clutched Amara close, her breath shallow. Not again, not again. Her eyes filled with tears, but now they burned with something stronger. Resolve. She reached for her phone and whispered into it, sending a trembling voice note to Mama Peace. "Mama, it is me. Mirabel is not who she says. She sells women. She wants to sell me too." She pressed send, her whole body shaking. That night, Lina swore to herself. She would not be a victim again, not her, and not any other girl. That night, after hearing Mirabel's call, Lina could not sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed in the grand mansion, her baby cradled against her chest, tears streaming silently. Her mind replayed every betrayal, her father's thunder, Madame Funke's plan to sell Amara, the rich man's poisoned kindness. And now this woman, Mirabel, whose soft smile hid fangs sharper than all the rest. She whispered into Amara's ear, voice shaking. "No more, my child. No one will hurt us again. I will not run this time. I will fight." Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. The voice note she had already sent to Mama Peace gave her courage. But she knew it wasn't enough. "If I leave with only words, who will believe me? They will believe her, not me. I need proof." The next morning, Mirabel smiled sweetly as though nothing had happened. "Did you sleep well, my dear?" she asked over breakfast. "Yes, Ma," Lina whispered, her eyes lowered, her heart hammering. She forced a small smile. "Your house is beautiful." Inside, she was screaming, but outside, she was calm. She began to notice everything. The cars that came at night with tinted windows, the girls who disappeared for weekends and returned with jewelry but hollow eyes, the laughter that felt more like chains than freedom. She hid her phone under her wrapper, recording snatches of conversation. She took photos from behind curtains, license plates, men's faces, piles of cash passed quietly from hand to hand. 3 days later, Mirabel entered her room, her perfume filling the air. "My dear," she said softly, brushing Lina's cheek with her manicured finger. "Are you ready to leave this little life of baking and step into something greater? I have arranged someone very important to meet you." Lina forced a shy smile, her stomach twisting. "Yes, Ma. But before I go with you, I must return to the church. I left some things there with Mama Peace. I must thank her properly." Mirabel's eyes narrowed for a moment, but then she laughed. "So loyal." "Very well. Go and say your goodbyes. Tomorrow, we will start your new life." She walked out, her heels clicking, not knowing she had already signed her own downfall. That night, Lina ran back to the church. Tears poured freely as she fell at Mama Peace's feet, showing her the recordings, the photos, the documents. "Mama," she sobbed, "this is who she really is. She sells girls like me to men. She wanted to sell me. Please, help me stop her." Mama Peace gathered her in her arms, holding both mother and child. "My brave daughter," she whispered through tears. "You have walked through fire, and yet you stand. You will not only save yourself, you will save many." Together, they carried the evidence to the local radio and human rights office. And soon, Mirabel's glittering empire began to collapse. The radio station smelled of ink and sweat, its walls plastered with old posters and headlines. Reporters sat hunched over typewriters, their voices fast, their eyes sharp. When Mama Peace and Lina walked in, Lina clutching Amara tightly, her hands trembling around her phone, the room fell silent. Mama Peace stepped forward. "We have something to show you," she said. The chief editor, a tired man with thick glasses, looked at them skeptically. But when Lina unlocked her phone and played the first recording, the room changed. "Yes, sir, she is 25, very fresh, beautiful. Next weekend I will deliver her. Don't worry, she trusts me already." It was Mirabel's voice, smooth, certain, evil. Gasps rippled through the office. Pens stopped writing. A young reporter clutched his headphones tighter as the words repeated. "Deliver her." Then the photos. Cars arriving at night, cash exchanging hands, men's faces caught in snapshots, women's hollow smiles. The editor leaned forward, his hands trembling. This is evidence. Real evidence. My God. How long has she been doing this? Tears streamed down Lina's face as she whispered, "Too long. She almost sold me too. But I could not let it happen. Not to me, not to anyone else." For a moment no one spoke. Then the editor stood abruptly. "We will not keep this silent. The world must know." By evening, the story was on every radio in the city. Mirabel, a wealthy businesswoman, has been exposed for running a human trafficking ring. Audio evidence reveals her arranging the sale of young women to powerful men. Photos confirm vehicles and transactions linked to the mansion. The words poured from radios, televisions, and newspapers. The people listened in shock. Some wept, some clenched their fists. All turned their anger toward the woman whose smile had fooled them for years. Next morning, Mirabel's mansion was surrounded. Police cars parked outside, sirens echoing through the street. Cameras flashed as officers led her out in handcuffs. Her expensive jewelry glittered uselessly under the sun, her smile finally gone. Crowds gathered, some shouting, some spitting, others simply watching in silence. She wanted to destroy our daughters. And look at her now. Justice has come. That night, Lina's face appeared on television for the first time. Not as a shamed daughter, not as a beggar on the roadside, but as a brave survivor. The headline read, "Young woman exposes human trafficking queenpin, speaks out for the voiceless." And when the reporter asked her why she did it, Lina's voice broke, but her words were clear. "Because I was once silent, and silence nearly destroyed me. I could not let others fall into the same trap. My daughter must grow in a world where truth is louder than fear." The church sisters gathered around Lina with tears in their eyes the night the news broke. The radio kept repeating her name, Lina Daniel, survivor, whistleblower, brave young mother. The sound was surreal. The same name that once brought whispers of shame now carried honor and power. Human rights groups reached out, praising her courage. They offered her financial support, not as charity, but as recognition of what she had risked. "You can start again," one officer told her, pressing an envelope into her hands. "Not just for yourself, but for every girl you have saved." Lina clutched the money tightly, her tears falling. She looked down at Amara, who clapped her little hands, unaware of the storm her mother had weathered. "Yes," Lina whispered. "We will start again." Weeks later, a small bakery opened near the church gates. Its sign was simple but proud. Amara's Bakes, bread, cakes, and hope. Each morning, Lina rose before the sun, tying Amara to her back. She mixed flour, sugar, butter, not just ingredients, but pieces of her story, baked into loaves and cakes. The smell of fresh bread floated into the streets. At first, customers came for curiosity. Then they returned for the taste. Soon, the bakery buzzed with life. Lina hired other young women, some rescued from Mirabel's clutches, paying them fairly, treating them with love. The girl once cast out in shame now gave dignity to others. Far away, in the chief's compound, the evening news played on a dusty television. Mama Grace sat on the floor, her wrapper faded, her eyes fixed on the screen. Chief Daniel leaned heavily on his cane chair, his hair fully gray now, his face lined with regret. The announcer's voice filled the room. Today justice has caught up with Mirabel, the wealthy woman exposed for trafficking young women. The hero behind her downfall is none other than Lina Daniel, daughter of Chief Daniel of Greenfield. Mama Grace gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. My child! My child! She is alive! She is strong! Tears poured down her cheeks like rain in storm season. She cried so loudly the neighbors rushed to the window, asking what had happened. Daniel's staff slipped from his grip. He sat frozen, his lips trembling. His chest rose and fell as though a mountain pressed against him. His eyes burned with tears he tried to swallow, but they spilled freely, streaming down his weathered cheeks. My daughter. His voice broke, hoarse with sorrow. The one I cast into the night. She saved the world while I sat here in my pride. Mama Grace turned on him, tears blinding her. Do you see, Daniel? Do you see? The child you threw away is the very one God lifted higher than all of us. You almost killed her with shame, but she became the pride of the nation. Her words pierced him like arrows. He bent forward, his hands clutching his knees, his sobs shaking his frame. For the first time since the night of his fury, the great chief wept openly, loudly, like a broken child. And in that little room, grief and pride lived side by side. That night, Mama Grace could not sleep. She sat by the lantern, clutching the calendar she had marked for 2 years with lines of sorrow. This time she drew a new mark, not of loss, but of hope. My daughter lives, she whispered through tears. My daughter rises, and one day, she will come home. And in the bakery miles away, Lina wiped flour from her hands, kissed her child's forehead and whispered, Mama, one day, I will find you. 3 years had passed since the night Lina collapsed at the church gate. 3 years of kneading dough before dawn, of rising with the smell of fresh bread and cakes, of building something from the ashes of betrayal. Her bakery, Amara's Bakes, had grown beyond the church gate. People ordered from nearby towns, mothers wanted her cakes at their children's birthdays, brides wanted her designs at their weddings, and even schools called for her bread. Lina was no longer the girl begging for water on the roadside. She was now known as the cake woman, the one who baked hope with her hands. One morning, as she packed a delivery, a young man in a neat suit arrived. He carried an envelope stamped with gold letters. Madame Lina, he said with a bow, you are requested to supply the wedding cake for the biggest ceremony in the city. A 5-step masterpiece, all expenses paid. Lina's heart skipped. Such an order meant more than money. It meant recognition, honor. She agreed. For weeks she labored. She and her girls measured, baked, and decorated, building each layer with care. Sugar roses bloomed across the tiers. Icing swirled like lace. When the last step was placed, the cake stood tall and proud, as though it carried her own story. Broken pieces rising into something whole. The wedding day came. Lina arrived in a neat gown, her daughter Amara now walking beside her, holding her hand. The hall glittered with chandeliers, filled with guests in fine lace and agbada. Drums and trumpets rang out, laughter filled the air. But as Lina pushed the cake into the hall, heads began to turn. People whispered, "Is that not the cake woman? She looks so beautiful. God has lifted her." Lina smiled shyly, focusing on her work. But then her eyes rose and froze. At the front of the hall, On the stage stood the groom, older now, his face marked with lines, but still wearing that same oily smile. Richard, her father's old friend, the man who had once called her special, who had crossed boundaries in her youth, who had tricked her father, who had ruined her life. Her breath left her body. The cake knife slipped from her trembling hand. The bride, radiant and joyful, turned, smiling as she spotted Lina. She walked quickly toward her. "So you are the famous baker. I've heard so much about you." Her smile softened as she saw Lina's pale face, the tears brimming in her eyes. "Are you all right?" Lina's lips trembled. She tried to speak, but her throat closed. At last, the words fell out, cracked and trembling. "If I tell you something, will you believe me?" The bride frowned slightly, concern in her eyes. "Of course, tell me." Lina took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears. "That man, the one you are marrying, he is not who you think he is. He was my father's friend, and he is the father of my child." The bride's smile froze. Her eyes widened. "What? What are you saying?" Lina's voice broke. "When I was still a teenager, he came into my parents' house when they were not home. He told me I was beautiful, that he would take me to the UK, that he would make me great. And then, he hurt me. He told me never to speak, or he would harm my family. I kept it secret for years, out of fear, out of shame." Her tears flowed freely now, her chest heaving. "Amara is his daughter, the child I carried in silence, the reason my father cast me out. And now, he stands here, laughing, pretending." The bride staggered back, her hand to her chest. "You mean, the man I'm about to marry?" "Yes," Lina whispered, choking on the words. "He is not your savior. He is a monster." The hall grew restless as the bride turned to face the stage. The groom was laughing with his friends, oblivious. But the bride's face darkened. She dropped the bouquet, lifted her gown, and walked away from him, her tears falling. Guests began whispering, the music faltered, the hall buzzing with confusion. Moments later, police officers entered. Cameras flashed as they strode up the aisle. "Richard Okoro," one officer barked. "You are under arrest for the abuse and exploitation of a minor. You have the right to remain silent." The hall erupted. Guests gasped. Some screamed. Phones rose in the air to record. The groom's oily smile crumbled as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He shouted, protested, cursed, but his voice was drowned in the roar of shame. That night, the news was everywhere. Prominent businessman arrested at his own wedding for past abuse. Survivor's courage exposes predator hidden in plain sight. In Greenfield village, the chief's compound was silent except for the radio. Mama Grace clasped her hands to her chest, whispering prayers through tears. Chief Daniel leaned forward in his chair, his body trembling as the words sank in. The man he once called brother. The man he defended over his own daughter. The man he trusted more than his blood. Daniel's staff fell to the ground as he dropped to his knees, his tears spilling freely. "Oh God," he cried, "forgive me. Forgive me for casting out my child. Forgive me for choosing a liar over her truth. Forgive me for every night she suffered because of my pride." And for the first time, the great chief bowed not before elders, not before wealth, but before the weight of his own regret. The sun was high over Greenfield when the sound of engines broke the silence. A black SUV rolled slowly into the dusty village road, its polished body reflecting curious faces of children running behind it. "Car! Car! Big car!" they shouted, chasing and laughing. The vehicle turned into Chief Daniel's compound, its tires crunching over the stones of a yard that had long lost its beauty. Neighbors gathered at the gates, whispering. Who could it be? The chief no longer has visitors. Maybe it is government people. The doors opened, and there she was, Lina, dressed in a neat gown, her hair shining in the sunlight, her eyes steady though tears shimmered in them. At her side stood Amara, taller now, dressed smartly, holding her mother's hand with pride. The crowd gasped. Is that not the chief's daughter? She has returned. God has done it. Inside the house, Mama Grace heard the commotion. A neighbor rushed in shouting, Mama Grace, come and see with your own eyes. She hurried out, her wrapper loose, her heart racing. And when she reached the yard, her knees almost gave way. My daughter, she whispered, her voice trembling. My child, my Lina. She ran forward, tears streaming, and threw her arms around her daughter. She held her as though she would never let go again. Lina clung to her mother, both of them sobbing, their tears soaking each other's shoulders. Mama, I am home, she whispered through her cries. After all the fire, I am home. Mama Grace kissed her face over and over, crying, You survived, my daughter. You survived. The villagers wept too, some clapping their hands, some wiping their eyes. For years they had whispered shame about the chief's family. Now they witnessed Grace standing alive before them. Then, from the doorway, leaning on his cane, came Chief Daniel. His hair was fully gray, his body thin, his face sunken. When his eyes fell on Lina, he froze. His lips trembled. His staff slipped from his grip and fell with a thud into the dust. You, his voice cracked, weak. My daughter, you returned. And slowly, her tears hot against her cheeks. She walked closer, her daughter's hand still in hers. Her voice broke as she said, Yes, Papa, I returned, but not the same girl you threw into the night. Today I return with the truth you refused to see. Her voice grew stronger, though it shook with pain. Do you know who fathered this child? It was your friend, the one you trusted more than me, the one you defended while you called me a liar, the one you chose over your own blood. The crowd gasped loudly, murmurs rippled. All eyes turned to the chief. Lina's tears flowed freely as she cried. Papa, I carried this shame alone because I knew you would never believe me. And when I needed your arms, you cast me out. You chose him. And I suffered years of hunger, betrayal, and pain, all because of your pride. Chief Daniel staggered as if struck. His cane wobbled, and he dropped to his knees in the dust. His hands shook as he covered his face, his sobs bursting out uncontrollably. My daughter, he wept. Forgive me, forgive me. I was blind, I was a fool. I cast away my own blood while embracing a snake. God punish my pride. Forgive me, my child. Forgive me before my bones return to the earth. The crowd grew silent, many crying, many covering their faces. Even children hushed, watching the once proud chief broken in the dust before his daughter. Lina's heart burned with sorrow. For a long moment she stood, tears pouring, her fists clenched. Then she looked down at her trembling father, and remembered the girl who once wept in the market with no one to help, the girl who swore she would be stronger. She bent slowly, lifting her father's face from the dust. Her voice shook but carried the strength of mercy. Papa, you wounded me deeper than words can say, but today I will not let bitterness win. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Chief Daniel wept harder, clutching her hand to his face. Thank you. Thank you, my child. Lina handed over a surprise of the land title documents, recovering all what he lost to his friend Richard, and the car log book to her father. Daddy, this is yours. The days after Lina's return were filled with whispers and tears. For years, the villagers had mocked, judged, and whispered about the chief's disgraced daughter. Now they saw her walk through the market with her head high, Amara holding her hand, and respect returned where shame once stood. Children pointed at her with smiles. Mama, that is the cake woman! She is the one who saved many girls, elders said. And mothers pulled their daughters closer, whispering, Be strong like her. Learn courage from her story. In the chief's compound, life began to change. Flowers that had long wilted now bloomed again under Mama Grace's careful hands. Laughter slowly returned to her lips. Each night she sat with her daughter, listening to her stories, the markets, the nights of hunger, the betrayals, the victories. Every word pierced her heart, but also stitched it back together. Chief Daniel was never the same man again. He walked with bent shoulders, not from pride but from humility. Often he sat outside, watching Lina and Amara play in the compound, tears quietly running down his wrinkled face. "God gave me another chance," he whispered often, "though I did not deserve it." He no longer spoke with the loud voice of an elder to be obeyed, but with the broken gentleness of a man who had tasted his own downfall. And strangely, the villagers respected him more in his humility than they ever had in his pride. Lina's bakery, Amara's bakes, expanded. With the support from human rights groups and the church, she opened a larger shop in the town center. Women lined up each morning for fresh bread, students bought snacks before school, and on weekends her cakes decorated weddings and birthdays. But more than bread, Lina gave hope. She employed young women, those who had once been deceived by Mirabel, those who had no families, those who had nearly been lost. She paid them fairly, taught them skills, and reminded them, "Your past does not define your tomorrow." People said, "She does not just bake bread, she bakes new lives." Amara grew quickly, her laughter filling every space she entered. At school, she was bright and curious. When teachers asked who her mother was, she proudly said, "Mama Lina, the cake woman." Every time Lina looked at her daughter, her heart swelled. "You are the reason I never gave up," she whispered often, pressing kisses into her hair. "You are my greatest victory." One Sunday afternoon, the church held a Thanksgiving service for Lina. The hall was full, the choir sang joyfully, and Mama P stood beside her, beaming with pride. When Lina was asked to speak, her voice trembled but was steady. "I was once cast out with nothing but tears," she said, holding Amara's hand. "I slept on the roadside, I begged for food, I was betrayed again and again. But God never left me. He gave me strength when I was weak, and He gave me this little girl to remind me that love survives even in the darkest nights."